Welcome to another installment of If It's in the Mind, It Can Be Managed, the Mind Management Mentors podcast. I'm your host, Cuddy Cudworth, and we've got an absolute doozy of an episode today for you. I'm actually really intrigued about what's going to be talking about today. As you know, with the podcast, there's not much pre-set up before we start. We go organic, we find out where the conversation goes, and we're always looking for solutions. Thank you very much to the 35,000 subscribers that we're coming up to, and hopefully we can grow that to 50,000 subscribers with your help, with the likes, the comments, and the shares on all that we do with the podcast. It's very much appreciated. And be very much aware that we are coming up to the Mind Management Mentors membership club, which is coming up very shortly, and you are going to be able to be part of the membership and start your own coaching business from start to scratch very shortly with all the modalities we do within mind management. Ladies and gentlemen, I am going to introduce our first guest. In fact, I'm not going to introduce you. You are going to introduce yourself. Tell us who you are, where you're from, and what you do, as if you were on blind date.
Well, that's an introduction. So my name's Hayley T. Wheeler. I live in Llanelli, a very small town just the other side of Swansea. My business is Emotion Mind Dynamic. It was created after helping my second son overcome his anxiety. He was having 8 or 9 panic attacks a day. To helping myself with my depression. He is now, this year, will be 10 years free of anxiety. And I took another 2 years to get myself over depression after helping him. So that's where Emotion Mind Dynamic was created. And it was not the plan to go and help other people like I've got into now, but I absolutely love it.
Oh, I love that's amazing. I had a guest on previously that talked about their son with autism and how they just would not relentlessly stop working with their son to help them understand their emotions. And emotions and mind are so intertwined, it's unbelievable. So I want to first of all ask you to please re-say whereabouts you're from in Wales, because I thought you'd sneezed. I'm not going to lie.
Llanelli.
What is it?
Llanelli.
Love that. I'm a fan of the Welsh accent. In fact, I have fond memories of going to Wales when I was about 17 years old and literally getting walked out with people with fire sticks because they fire and because they didn't like English people. That was my actually last memory. When they found out I was English, they were like, "Get out of Wales! Just get out of Wales." There was a very harsh reaction, and I was on a holiday with my girlfriend at Butlins down at Pwllheli. Pwllheli. I don't know why I said that. I've not got a Welsh accent in any way whatsoever.
I've not been to the Pwllheli one, but I've been to Minehead.
I love this. This is absolutely your accent. Absolutely, is fantastic. Love it. Absolutely love it. So as always, when it comes to the podcast, we're always looking for solutions, and you've clearly found something so unique. And thank you very much for sharing your story on helping your son with panic attacks, and he's not had anxiety for so many years now. We're going to deep dive that. And well done for saying, how to help myself overcome depression. I know I had depression many, many years ago, and I found NLP to be really helpful for me, which is a modality that I still use with a lot of my clients. But let's first start with the story of your son, if that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. So he was born with anxiety. So going back sort of 11 years prior to realizing it was anxiety, we had a critical life or death birth. It was a cesarean, emergency cesarean, and he was a big baby. And it was traumatic, but back 21 years ago, we didn't talk about birth trauma. And I literally, he was my second. I was up in 12 hours showering. I was walking around after having a cesarean, so the nurses didn't really see any problems. And we had to stay in because he had a liquid on his kidneys, so we stayed in for 5 days, but I was up walking. So what they saw was, I'm going to assume, was a capable woman who just got on with it, which I did. So I didn't realize that. I knew that there was something different about him. So I've worked with children for now over 3 decades, and I've got 4 myself. My eldest is 24, my youngest is 16. He was different, and he cried a lot. But I thought eventually when he got old enough, I just thought he was a brat and he wanted attention, and I punished him for doing some of the stuff that he did. But then when I was at rock bottom with my depression, that's when I realized that it was anxiety. It just kind of, it was like an aha moment on one of my lousy days. So I realized that I needed to help him because at the age of 11, he was just going up to comp, or secondary school as they call it now.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, and I knew that if he found drugs, he was going to love drugs. So I had to do something. Didn't think about going to the doctor, didn't think about anything really, just knew that I needed to help him. So the process was helping him understand anxiety and what was going on for him so he could tell me so I could help him. So that was fun. There were some extreme moments with the anxiety that most of the other children remember, but he doesn't, which is really interesting. And then helping him overcome the anxiety and helping him express himself and understand it and go from having 8 or 9 panic anxiety attacks a day to nothing in 10 years, to watch him grow into the adult he is now. He's 21 now.
Mhm.
Is amazing because he worries a little bit more than the other three, but he doesn't have anxiety and he manages things he knows from the really early warning signs if something is bothering him, so we deal with it then.
That is an amazing story. It's about recognizing the pattern, isn't it?
Absolutely.
So that light bulb moment, which I think is an important part of when, especially when we get consumed by depression and getting into a depressed state, that light bulb, because we're going to come back to why you were depressed as well. So I think that's also a second story to that because everybody's got a different interpretation of what depression is, how it affects us, and those things. So talking about your story of depression is going to be extremely beneficial. But in that moment of you being down with I always call it the fog and the cloud and the oppressing feelings that we have, what was that light bulb? What was the light bulb moment where you go, oh, hang on a minute, it's anxiety for him. What was it? Because that doesn't just pop up.
Well, it did. I literally
Yeah.
was sitting in my living room and I just went, it's anxiety. It was literally like that. And I thought, right, I get it. And like you have that download of, I kind of replayed his whole life in a flash.
Downloads. Yeah.
And I was like, I can see it. I can see everything. Like even from the age of 3, when he said to me, I was taking them to a play area. I was must have been a little bit older. I had my daughter, so there's only 2 years between him and his sister. So we were going to this play area, and he said to me, "Will people laugh at me?" At the age of 3, it was bizarre, and I just didn't think. But all those moments where he was slamming doors. He was not sleeping at night because he was getting up and he couldn't settle in bed. Or the holidays we went on when I stuck him on a banana boat because he wanted to go on, but the anxiety suddenly kicked in and he screamed all the way around. All these moments just fell into place. And it literally was, it's anxiety, just like that.
So when you say it was anxiety, how do you define anxiety? How do you define anxiety for people?
So what I saw with him and what I see with clients now is that it's a full emotional vessel. So you've been through life and you've collected all these emotions because society won't allow us to express ourselves properly. We talk about talking about emotions and mental health, but we don't actually talk it through. So we gather all these emotions, and to the point where people will describe their emotional vessels as planes, trains. I've had a cruise liner, cars, motorbikes. Now people are carrying this all the time. So what happens is when that's full and there's no more space, no more capacity for happiness, no more room for passion or excitement, then the anxiety starts. So you tend to find people have volcano moments or small things happen, they blow or they complain or they need these coping strategies, which happen every 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes to open that vessel up a little bit and relieve a little bit of the emotional pressure. But the problem is that's where the roller coaster starts. the emotional vessel opens and empties a little bit. They feel, I can breathe again. They go on with life, and then the anxiety peaks again because they're stressed, because their child does something and they're frustrated, or something happens in work, or somebody cuts them across the road, and all these things build back up. So you're constantly on this up and down roller coaster throughout your day. If you're lucky, it's weekly, daily, but sometimes it's 20 minutes, an hour, every hour, every 20 minutes, you're feeling that pressure. So my focus is on emptying that emotional vessel.
Beautiful. Love it, Ailey. Love it. Where did your fabulous son's panic attacks arise? Was there a pattern to where his panic attacks arose?
They were from birth. Going back when he was 6 weeks old. So he was already crying all the time. And then at 6 weeks old, I took him to a pub to meet my auntie. We were going for food. And he just screamed to the point I ended up going round different pharmacists to find teething gels, anything that would stop him from crying, because I thought it was pain. The scream was so intense. I thought he was in pain. But his pattern was going to new places, going places where he hadn't been before, hadn't experienced. And as he got older, he learned to ask questions like, what if we go there and this happens? Or what is there? Or where are the toilets? And all these questions. But as a baby, he couldn't communicate that, and he would cry more. And then his anxiety would peak the closer we got to going places or doing something new. His anxiety would peak because his emotional vessel was overflowing.
Yes. It couldn't, I love that. It couldn't communicate as a baby, so the questions, so as a mum, when the questions keep, what's your first response to that? Before you came to that, and we'll talk about the download, because there'll be a lot of people like, what's the download? Because we get them in that little space of presence, we get the download. I get them when I'm driving. Strangely enough, I get them when I'm driving because I'm not even thinking about the driving. It's an absolute terrible thing to do. And I get the downloads when I'm driving. So, what was the pattern of question? It was worry. It's basically worry and fear, isn't it?
Yes,
And if,
absolutely.
if somebody doesn't know how to recognize that, then it's the questions that arise before to alleviate the feelings and the emotions, like releasing of the emotional vessel. And that's a good sign for parents to go, oh, maybe it is anxiety. My child is not just a questioning child. It's the wanting to alleviate the fears, isn't it?
It's controlling something. So when you have anxiety or depression or burnout or overwhelm, you are at a point where you need to control something, and this is where the behaviors come into it. So there's a coping system we implement, which is chaotic behaviors, and we implement them very quickly because we need to feel relief, we need to feel in control, and we're constantly putting something into place. The other thing is a management system where we go to the gym 7 days a week because it clears my head. But the problem with the management system is if you can't go to the gym, or you can't run, or you can't swim, or you can't go to yoga for whatever reason, that anxiety, that depression, that comes back. So either you're coping or managing, they're not really healthy systems to implement. So if your emotional vessel is full, then we are either coping or managing usually. So what you would see in a child looks like crying over nothing, screaming, shouting, falling out, arguing, withdrawing, asking those questions. And it might be the same question 20 times or 20 different questions. Bedtime is huge for adults and children. So if you go to bed and they want to get up for water, food, a snack, a story, bedtime is horrendous because everything is quiet. Whereas through the day, you're so busy, but at night time, it's quiet.
Yes, which and especially so we are, and especially kids these days, they're overstimulated with iPads and phones and games. So when it comes to the stillness and the calm, it's the little monkey mind starts chattering, going, "Oh, now we need to talk about something that happened 4 years ago or last week," or those conversations start, don't they?
Yeah, and this is where we are stopping the ability of children to spend time with themselves because of the things like social media. My son, we didn't have a lot of social media. We're talking about 20 odd years ago, so social media
Yeah.
really wasn't that big. But one of the things he did, he had a bit of an addictive personality, which is why I say that if he'd have found drugs, he would have loved them. So he would go to bed, and if he went quietly, I knew he'd hidden his DS somewhere. So what he would do was go to bed, play his DS, fall asleep, wake at 4, play it again, and fall asleep again. So he was tired in the mornings, but it would exacerbate all the behaviors then because he was tired. But he didn't show anything in school. School was fine. When I said to his teacher one year, does he have these volcano moments in school? And she just looked at me like my head had fallen off. She's like, no. He is the most pleasant, respectful, helpful child I've ever wished to meet.
Oh, and as a parent, you're like, oh my God. Then we internalize it and go, oh my God, it's me. I'm a bad mum.
Well, do you know what, right? One of the things that has surprised me is that I didn't.
Oh,
And
wow.
with my depression, guilt was a huge part of my depression, but I didn't internalize it. And I can't even tell you why I didn't internalize it. I just accepted that this was what it was, and I needed to deal with it and teach him and give him the tools not to feel like that.
Yes. And by the way, this is fascinating, Haley. Seriously, it's a powerful story, especially for other parents right now. Being able to recognize where the questions are coming from, why we've got the questions, and how to be able to, as a parent, to be able to alleviate that is. I will come back to like 3 tips of what can a parent do starting tomorrow, because that's going to be absolutely invaluable to people. So when we're talking about your depression. How did you recognize it? How did you know? And what do you believe started it?
So I'll start with that one, and you might have to remind me. So it was a slow creep
Yeah.
into depression. So I already had negative self-talk. So I never ever empowered myself. It was always criticizing, self-punishment, self-judging, all this stuff happened. So when depression started creeping in, that just got worse, but it wasn't a change in anything. So by the time I realized it was depression, I'd denied it for years. Learning became a coping mechanism. So at one point, I was sleeping 2 to 4 hours a night. I was doing teaching, working full time, so doing my teaching degree on a Tuesday, and I had 4 other online courses I was completing, and I was finishing a book I'd written. And that's what kept me going for 2 years. I was able to distract and be productive and raise the kids and get the kids to their hobbies, their games, their sports. So all this thing that people say to you that, depression presents a particular way, I didn't present like that.
So how did you what? Because that's a really good point. I mean, when I remember when the because I did go to the doctors, and I always think it's important to share is I if you don't know understand about victim mindset and growth mindset. And I know that when we say victim mindset, it can be quite a triggering word, but it's that woe is me, the whole world's against me, and when it was the language. Now I'm obsessed with language internally, so that when I start feeling like I'm swaying to that, I know how to bring myself back and things. But it's for me, it was the whole world's against me. No one loves me. I can't do anything right. This is wrong. This is wrong. How did it present for you? What was it? What was it for you to realize? Because everyone thinks depression is like, oh, we're going to be suicidal. I'm like, actually, I was never suicidal. I just literally was so self-deflated. It was unbelievable. What was it? What was it for you then, Haley?
So for me, I don't sleep. I've never had a good sleep pattern as a kid, as a
Yeah.
teenager. I always operated on very little sleep, so that wasn't massive change. But 2 to 4 hours was quite drastic. But so it started in 2010, and it was just a slow creep. Things just felt harder. Life just felt harder. My thoughts were heavier. I felt heavier. So at 2010, I started in university doing my teaching while I was working in women's aid. And that was my coping mechanism. So I was avoiding thinking and being in my own head. So I would work, I would do everything I needed to do for the children. So I would get up at, I think probably depending what time I'd gone to sleep, any time from 4 o'clock, I would get up. I would work, get the kids up, get them ready for school, get myself ready. And I had a real structure to my day. So slapping on makeup, dressing tidy, doing my hair, all things that I did robotically.
So that's outwardly.
Outwardly and inwardly, I felt like I was dying. I felt like I was just like a flower shrinking as they die because nobody saw it. I smiled, I laughed, I joked, I did all the things that people assume you can't do. But I was so tired, but not physically tired. I was emotionally exhausted. I felt like a failure. I developed a stutter.
Mm.
I lost my peripheral vision for 24 hours one night. It was bizarre because I was so full of all these emotions. My emotional vessel was overflowing and I kept taking on more. But because I had four kids and they relied on me, they kept me going. My main focus was make memories with them. No matter how I felt, so the days that I really didn't want to, there was one particular day in 2016 where it was absolutely hammering down, and it had been all summer. And I said, get your snow stuff on, we are going out. So we went out and they were in the puddles jumping, it was soaking wet, the dogs and everything. But for me, I didn't want to be there. I didn't want to be out in the rain. I didn't want to be anywhere. I wanted to be in bed under the covers if I could, but I never did because I wanted them to have memories of something else, but that guilt of just not being there emotionally was harsh. So the guilt and shame were huge internally.
They are. It's emotions, isn't it? I think we're going to be talking about the same thing as we move into what EMD and the processes that you use for people. But I think with the conversations I work with a lot of businesses, and I'm like, don't talk about mental health, talk about emotional health.
Mm.
That it's emotions. I went depression, stress, and anxiety are emotions, and if we can work and process the emotions, trust me, your life will change. It's not mental because depression's physical as well. There's
Mm.
the lethargy, and it kind of sounds that you're explaining a numbness and a because you're so full of too many emotions, your body just turns off and you can't feel anything.
Yeah, and there's an overwhelmed numbness. You have,
Yeah.
as you said, you carry in all of these emotions, but you don't feel anything necessarily. And one of the kind of irrational thought processes I struggled with was if I became successful, one of my children would die.
Oh, bless you.
So I my business was just staying afloat at that point because I couldn't become successful because my brain in its irrational form
Yeah.
connected that thought. And even though the rational side of it was like, no, you're having a laugh here, I couldn't because I didn't know what that would do to me. Because if you can imagine having a jar, having a beautiful vase that you've dropped on the floor, but you've just managed to pick all the pieces up and it's whole again. But if you move or if you just let it go a little bit, it's going to fall apart again. And that's what it felt like all the time for me. That anything had the ability to make me fall apart. Anything.
It's yeah, it's the because our emotions are so just there. They're right there, aren't they? They're everywhere. So it doesn't matter what nerve you touch, it's gonna fire off every one of the emotions that you've got. With oh my, I remember, and I remember going to the doctors, and I was saying to the doctor, "Look, I'm crying all the time." And look at my guy, I said, "Look, I'm crying, and I'm just weeping all the time. I think my wife's gonna leave me." And I said, I know she's not doing anything. I just know she's not doing anything, but I'm just sat there thinking she's going to leave me because why would anyone love me because of something that happened, which was, by the way, for me, it was an absolute catastrophe. But actually, looking back at it, I'm like, you absolute walloper. But this is the scenarios we create, right? And we say we suffer more here than actually in reality. But I remember saying to the doctor, "This is what I'm going through." Oh, I can give you the phone number for the Samaritans. I'm like, well, I'm not suicidal. What do I need to do? What's wrong with me? Again, language, language, language. What's wrong with me so I can stop doing this because I think my wife's going to leave me, and all those kind of things. And he was like, it's depression. And I was like, no, it's not. That's what mental people have. No, that was literally my response. Was like, no, that's mental illness. And we go on that journey. It's like, oh, it's emotions. All right, I need to deal with this. And yes, meditation is what that changed my life. It was meditation. But for others, it's like, oh no, I can't meditate. I'm like, I used to say that myself. But now I can sit with my thoughts and I don't actually have to engage with them. And it's a really powerful thing. So look, thank you very much for sharing your story, Haley, which is what brings us part to the next part of the journey, which the next part of the story. What is EMD?
So emotion mind dynamic is a full, and I mean full, intense process. It really is about understanding yourself. The main thread is processing, expressing, and releasing emotions, but there's a lot of self-esteem building. There's pieces about relationships. There's a values piece in there. So if I give you sort of an online version, there's 31 units online. But if I was to do it with a child, I do it in 3 sessions, teenagers, 5 sessions, and adults, 6 sessions. But they can be up to 4 hours long.
Wow, that's intense.
It is intense.
To keep people, yes. A lot of my sessions with people, I never stick it off to an hour. I'm always like an hour and a half because we need to go through quite a few things. But yeah, that's right. So well, let's deep dive that, Haley. So I'm coming to Haley because I'm depressed, right? I am the whole world's against me. I'm lashing. I'm just literally going to give you the name. I'm lashing out. Whenever I was crabbing, absolutely crabbing. It didn't matter what anybody said to me. I was just like, "Rah." I mean, I was, and I'm 6'2" and 4 feet wide. And I say this a lot in the podcast. When you meet me, if my emotions are on a downer, we don't realize it. We suck the energy out of the room. And when I fill this much space, I suck a lot of energy out of the room. So I'm coming to see you, Haley, because I want to work with EMD. How do we start?
So as an adult, you go in to do 6 sessions with me. They'll take up to 3 months, roughly. So it'll depend on you and how much work you put in and how much you've got to deal with. So session number 1, we're going to look at, we've done the emotional vessel, we've looked at that. So that's a real important understanding before you start the journey. And then we're going to do the coaching model. We're going to look at all your internal patterns and how to put a stop to those. Then we're going to look at a behavior analysis. I love the behavior analysis because it shows how many behaviors you are putting into place every hour. So you're going to understand why those behaviors and what they do for you. Session 2, I'm going to share my life reflections with you, and then you're going to write your own life reflections. Now, this is a real integral part of the emotional processing, expressing, releasing, because you're not just looking at what you've been through, you're looking at the emotional impact. So you're not just going to tell me I had a partner who was abusive. We're going to look at how did that emotionally impact you. And there's a couple of criteria that you look at. Then you'll come back and you'll take me through that, which is why sessions are so long, because you'll take me through that and you'll understand it better. Then we do a relationship evaluation on your relationship with yourself. So we look at how you feel about yourself, how you treat yourself. We look at the good or the bad of that. And then we do a very structured letter where you get to say exactly what you want to say. You can say whatever it is you want to say. And I will say to children, you can swear. And I've had parents sit in on like an 8-year-old child's letter and they're effing and blinding in the letter. It's very uncomfortable. But it's your letter. It's where you get to truly express yourself without the risk of somebody attacking you or defending against it. And then we look at the values based on your self-esteem and that. I mean, we do that throughout the process anyway, but we set the foundations for long-term well-being in the last session then.
It's amazing. It is. And Hayley, who have you been working with recently, if you don't mind my asking?
So I've worked with a rowing team and we did some pre-work before they went and rowed the Atlantic. We did some pre-work and then we did some kind of, so they did individual work and then we did some group work, teamwork, and then they went on the row. I work with children, so my kind of audience with one-to-ones is 5 to 80, so quite a broad range of people
Mm.
I work with. Just started working with a college football team, a female college football team. And I love to work with adults who are ready. You have to be ready.
Have
This
to
is not
want
for the
to.
faint-hearted.
I just was on a business call today with somebody, and they went, "Look, this is the da 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 da." I'll not say what it was, but and I'm like, "Look, it's not a problem, but they have to want to do it." I said, "There's just no point wasting money. You have to ask them because the first three questions I'm going to ask them is, do you want to change? Do you know you want to change? Is this going to be pointless? Because sitting here and talking about these problems is good to a point, but we need to start putting things into action." And she's like, "Is that really?" I said, "Look, I'm not a counselor, I'm not a therapist. We will look at the past and move you forward and see how the behaviors inhibit what's going on, and we'll allow those aha moments. But if you're not willing to do it, it's a waste of money." I said, "It's a waste of your money for your business." And I love those open and transparent conversations. So you've completely intrigued me. What did you do with the rowing team? Because I'm guessing if you're going to row the Atlantic, you are at some points, if it's a constant rowing, you're going to be crabbing, as we say in Scotland, to be fair. I find that fascinating. So what did you do for the rowing team?
So the process of EMD, so I took them through the process and then together we looked at the emotional impact of each other and how emotionally they fit together, how they can use their strengths. So I also use disc+.health, which is a health focused disc behavior profile.
Mm,
And we look at then what the risks are if they continue to behavior shift or how they become more aligned with who they are. So really, it's about emptying that emotional vessel. That's the key thing. This process is about emptying your emotional vessel because while you're carrying that, it's heavy. If it's imagine carrying a cruise liner every day, it's heavy, right? So if we can reduce that to a bicycle, a motorbike, that'll be heavy. But if we can do the big bulk of it, you're not always going to get everything at the same time. So things will come in time and you'll have to process and express those as well. But it's the same process. If somebody is stuck or if somebody is wanting to progress, even if you're not struggling with your mental health, emptying your emotional vessel gives you a sort of a flatter plane to start on.
yeah, I love that. Hayley, this was a fascinating conversation, by the way, Hayley.
Okay.
Genuinely, what an apps. I loved it. I'd never even thought about. And for a parent, do you think it's hard for a parent to say, my child was born with anxiety? Do you think that's a hard?
Yeah, because I think people don't recognize it. Because for me, I didn't recognize it. It was behaviors. I thought he was a spoiled brat. But if you look at their behaviors and look at what's motivating them and look at the irrational side of it,
Yeah,
that's the key. And I do often find a lot of parents will often admit that they struggle with anxiety or have suffered with anxiety, which is it a learned behavior? I mean, Harrison was born 100%. It was a life or death birth. So it was a traumatic entrance into this world. And lots of children do. Lots of
yeah,
mums, and we're not talking about it. So I think it's a topic we need talking about more and we need to remove the guilt from it because it doesn't matter where the anxiety comes from. It doesn't matter what happened before. We just need to help the child process and express those and release those emotions.
yeah,
Same with ourselves. We've got to do it for ourselves anyway.
yeah. Because there is the old adage of everything's a learned behavior.
And
I get that because that's what's the most common thing is it's a learned behavior.
I just don't, I don't think it matters. So I always focus on understanding. You can know yourself like the back of your hand. You can know exactly what you do, how you do it. But if you don't understand all the little bits and pieces that you need to understand, you won't change anything.
True. That is true. So Haley, what's the bit apart from his son, what's the biggest win Haley's ever had with a client? Not your win, the client's win.
It's not feeling suicidal. Having a
Mm,
guy who came the first day I met him, he'd been on the pier waiting to just, or considering and contemplating ending it all. And for him to say to me at the end, I effing didn't think that sitting in a room with a woman was going to help.
yeah,
Seeing that sort of, that for me is just, every client is a win. They get
yeah,
results, but just somebody who takes life on then after in the way they should have been living life all along.
yeah. It's I remember it's I'm always mindful of how I speak because I know that we speak a lot, but it's never as hard as we think, and it's surprising how easy it is.
I that would absolutely describe EMD. It's not an easy process because you've never done it before.
Yeah.
But actually, when I hold your hand all the way through, there's like you're in contact with me in between. There's no letting you do it on your own completely. When someone's given you the tools, teaching you the information you didn't have, and
Mm,
they're giving you the questions you need to ask. They are showing you the way because I'm equally as vulnerable. I step every step in front of them. So I share every step of the way. So if I'm asking you to do it, I'm doing it myself.
mm,
So that vulnerability isn't so strong. It doesn't
yeah.
feel so hard.
Yeah. Haley, thank you so much for sharing. Is there anything you think you would like to add to this podcast before we wrap up?
What I would love to do is to let people know that everything is possible. Because when you're struggling with depression, anxiety, burnout, you think nothing's possible.
No.
But it is possible to come the other side of it and live without it. And I know that's not a common thing that the medical professionals say, but you can come the other side and live without those things, no
I
matter how
know.
long you've been living with them. I've dealt with people 30 years who've been living with them,
Yeah,
20 years on medication.
I know. It's I remember you know, it's I get what you're saying, or that I mean it's not slamming the medical profession because it's strange because the more you learn, the more I realize the less I know.
Yeah.
And it's that curiosity. And I know a lot of coaches have these open questions like, why do people not use EMD or NLP more and understanding that I think NLP is still classed as a pseudoscience,
Mm.
which means a science that might not possibly work and there's no factual things for it. But I remember, and again, if anyone comments and said, "Could you're wrong of your numbers," I think antidepressants technically work or have a chance of working about 64% of the time. Well, I think that's quite high, to be fair. But they
Mm.
say that placebo works 62% of the time, which suggests that the only reason they're allowed to say that antidepressants work is because it works 2% more than natural placebo. And placebo is just being told that this works.
Mm.
And I find that such a powerful concept for anyone. I think that's what that I'm sure that's what spurs us all on to keep talking our version of coaching or therapy or counseling because we know it works because we've gone through that process. It doesn't work for everyone if they're not willing already to choose that. And
Mm.
I suppose that is putting accountability out there. I had to change. In fact, that's a really good question. I knew I had to change for my wife. Why did you know you had to change? What was the tipping point for Haley?
So I got up one morning and I had this really dark thought about one of my kids. And I
Mm.
knew that I either had to walk away or I had to do something. Because if I didn't, I knew I wouldn't do anything, but that thought frightened me.
Yeah.
I physically stepped back when I had that thought, and I realized at that moment I have two choices here, walk away. And I couldn't walk away. I was the one they were reliant on. I had no, there was no walking away. So my battle began there to overcome depression.
That recognizing that dark thought that popped in creates that fear within, oh my God, where did that come from?
It was terrifying to
It's
think that I
language.
would think like that.
Yes. Yes. So, can I ask a question?
Yes,
Do thoughts like that still pop up, but you just disengage with them? Do they still pop up?
no. So I will say that I'm the other side of depression.
Yeah.
And one of my indicators of bad days are disappointment. So if I feel disappointment in my children, I know I'm having a bad day. I mean, it hasn't happened now, God, for I
Three
reckon
days.
it's about 3 years.
Right, 3 days. I've had a good 3 days.
Yeah, it's been a long time, but it was one of my, it was again another surprising part of depression was the disappointment. I was disappointed in everything and everyone. Everybody just let me down, but they didn't. It just, that was how I felt. I was disappointed in myself. And I was disappointed I couldn't get myself out of it. I was disappointed because I felt like that. I was disappointed I didn't want to get out of bed in the morning. So I gauge that now with disappointment, but every day I'm using the tools within Emotion Mind Dynamic. Everything I give to my clients I use, and I journal every day using the coaching model. So I use the tools still as an ongoing thing because I know I'll never go back there. Never go back there. It's that darkness.
Yeah, and it's recognized, and I think that's the most powerful part is recognizing, and for anybody watching this, well, actually, Cuddy and Haley, how do we recognize it? And I recognize it from my internal language, from my thoughts. If they are crabby, if they are bitchy, if they are resentful, I know that I'm heading towards a negative, disempowered place. I call it my thought pendulum. So I always stay on. Everyone's, well, you can't live in pure bliss. I'm like, no, no. I know that, curiosity, happiness, and joy brings my thought pendulum down. So I know when I'm in a good place when I have no thoughts or a lack of any kind of judgment. It's when and that's when the downloads happen. My downloads happen when I'm not actually thinking about anything.
Yeah.
That's when that silence comes in and all the information that's out there that I need just pops in. It just pops in, and we're like, my God, where did that idea come from? Oh my, that's actually a good idea. And that's how you're absolutely right about it. You use disappointment as your key indicator. And that's why I use the thought pendulum for myself. And I still use the thoughts and the techniques. And there is sometimes I allow myself to be crabby and resentful too long, but it's that moment, that epiphany of, oh my God, you've actually been doing that for 3 weeks. Right, we need to have a chat. Go for a dip or do whatever the many things that I do because
Mm.
that what brings me down to kilter. Love it, honestly, Haley. Thank you so much for coming on. You've been an absolute joy, and I do love the branding in the background as well. I love that. I've always had black and gold for priority mind management, but I'm actually quite liking the navy and the gold. So very nice.
Good.
It's been a pleasure having you on. What one thing can you share to the world right now that's going to make a difference?
I always give this away, but I have got a couple of things I'd like to say. But you are the most important person in your world. If you are not looking after yourself, nobody else is doing it for you.
Very true. Haley, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much to what Frankie Grit, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's Frankie Grit that gave us the introduction. Well done, well placed. If it's in the mind, it can be managed. Emotions and the mind are very much interlinked. If you ever want to speak to anybody, it's Haley Wheeler from the Welsh place I can't pronounce, and I'm not going to try and pronounce, but please get in contact. And please remember, like and subscribe. If it's in the mind, it can be managed. And we always look for a solution because there's always something out there for us. I always remember this, which is a joke, which falls flat sometimes, but I'm going to do it. Remember, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. It could be a train coming, but there's always a light at the end of the tunnel. As always, big love from Cuddy, and we'll see you on the next episode of the Mind Management Mentors podcast.